I always enjoy when you're here in New York visiting because you always stop in the studio, and you couldn't have picked a better time after a week of so much volatility. We've been so focused on what's happening in the U.S. and Europe, and the emerging markets have gotten very hard hit, Brazil in particular. Kathryn, is this a time for investors to be getting in? Is it overdone in Brazil? But even earlier in the year, Brazil was underperforming.
That's true, Lisa. And since from the beginning of the year, Brazil has been a massive underperformer. In the first half of the year, it was mostly endogenous factors, policy risk, inflation risk, et cetera. And now in the second half, it's obviously more of the macro external risks, the U.S. and Europe.
And this is a country heavily reliant on commodities,
Correct.
right? So how much are oil prices falling off impacting the stock market now?
Well, yeah, the Petrobras is 15% of the market. You have Vale, 15% of the market. In total, and aggregate, commodities are about half of the Bovespa. So yes, commodities play a huge role in the Bovespa. From now through year end, I don't see much impetus for the EWZ to outperform or to even recoup much of its gains. As you said, it's the worst performer in EM, one of the worst in the world.
Is it oversold, though? Is this overdone? When you look at the credit markets in Brazil and you look at the stock market, why is there so much fear about that particular country? I mean, Mexico almost seems to be performing better from this perspective.
Oh, yeah, certainly. Mexico's outperforming Brazil. That's something that we've been expecting since the beginning of the year. But you're right. Multiples are so cheap. In Brazil, they're between 7 and 8 on a PE basis. That's about half of what they are in any other equity market in Latin America. Actually, the multiples in Brazil are cheaper than in aggregate EM, including Asia. So, yes, I think the EWZ doesn't have much short-term upside. But if you're a longer-term investor, I think you should look at Brazil. And I think sectoral plays are very interesting because there's some sectors in Brazil that have been savagely beaten. For example, home builders, financials. There's some more kind of endogenous reasons for that. For example, there have been some government capital controls, macroprudential measures trying to take down the size of the credit expansion. But I think in the longer term, fundamentals, specifically for a few sectors, are going to prove positive for these stocks.
And then in 10 seconds here, is there one particular catalyst that turns the market around there?
Look, I think in the short term, you could probably see a QE3 on the horizon. I think the Fed laid the groundwork for that in the near term. So, of course, a QE3 would give a boost to equities and to the risk trade for sure.
All right. Thanks so much, Kathryn. Always a pleasure to have you. That was Kathryn Rooney Vera, Senior Macroeconomic Strategist at Bulltick Capital Markets, breaking down what has happened over in Brazil and the other emerging markets for us over the last week or so.